Record. Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to what should be the Friday Night Live, but is the Wednesday Night Live because Friday night is Christmas. So we've got a Christmas special. And we've got, I've got Dawn Sober Fish on as my very special guest for the Christmas special.
I do feel special, thank you.
And I've got my Christmas jumper on, but I'm far too hot. Dear me, it's a struggle, and I've got a hot cup of tea next to me as well. So
can you make sure everybody can hear us?
Yes, that's a good point, actually, isn't it?
Just before we do an hour of fun, Christmas fun, mute.
I think, to be honest, I think everybody knows you, but possibly some people don't. So do you want to sort of and also you've got a very festive personal story, which we were just talking about. So I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, my name's Dawn, but I'm more well known as Sober Fish these days. I've been sober for 4 years, which I celebrated at the end of November. And yeah, we were just talking about me doing my journey in my full start, because I set myself the challenge of doing 2017 sober, basically because I was very overweight, I was smoking, I was drinking, I was in a bit of a mess really, and really weirdly, an article popped into my newsfeed by Board Panda of before and after photos, and I looked at these people before and after giving up alcohol, and I looked at these photos and I was like, oh my god, these people just look absolutely amazing. Like, and it had never really entered my head before that alcohol might be the problem, and so the seed was planted, and I decided to take a year off of alcohol starting the 1st of January 2017. Set up a blog because I decided that I was going to tell the world how shit sobriety was. I don't really know why I decided that I was going to tell the world it was going to be rubbish. But it was also to document weight loss, because I'd been on diets my whole life, and I was convinced that giving up alcohol would assist me in that area. So I wanted to do before and after photos based on this article to show how alcohol affected weight loss. And but my plans got scuppered because I got really ill in November. I basically got a new job, which I was starting the first week of December, and I think I was stressed about that. I think I just had my quota of alcohol. I think my body was just rejecting anything that went into it, and just enough was enough. So I went on a weekend with friends. I drank all weekend, and little did I know that was the last weekend that I would drink. And I'm sure people have seen my before and after photo, which is like the before photo is the worst photo you've ever seen in your life. And obviously I never realised that would be my last drinking photo either. So yeah, it's and you know, I thought sobriety was going to be boring, but actually I just got my life back, and I just see the 27th of November 2016 as the start of my life. You know, I've just never looked back, never ever regretted that decision at all.
I love that photo because there's something about it that sums up drinking, because you just look so
the happiness,
miserable.
The pure joy.
But you're like, the way you're dressed up, as well, as if you're determined to enjoy yourself, but you're not quite making it. And there's something about it that it encapsulates drinking for me. Like, it should be all this fun, but it just isn't.
It is horrendous. I mean, I've got blusher on my cheeks. I look quite red tonight because it's boiling in here as well, but blusher on my cheeks and a wig on, and just the face from hell. And I remember putting on my first before and after photo and digging out, like going through Facebook, like, well, what was the photo of the night that I finished drinking? Oh, that's it. You know, and everybody else has got like normal photos, and I happen to have this hell on a lens. But Yeah, it became iconic.
Did you stop smoking at the same time as you stopped drinking?
I did,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So how was
I
that?
tried to give up smoking before as well, and the only time I ever went back to smoking was when I was drinking. So
Yeah,
it
that's
was
quite common.
almost like the seed was being planted, that the problem wasn't the smoking and the problem wasn't the weight. The problem was something else that was making these things happen for me. And I gave up smoking, I think, for about 3 or 4 months before my 40th birthday. So I knew I could do it, but then, it's a long story, but my 40th birthday got triple booked at the venue. And I found out a week before. And so I just literally went onto the fags and drank it. So when I got to my 40th, I was back to where I'd started. But that made me think, like, it's you go to the cigarette when you're stressed, you go to the alcohol when you're stressed, and the two go together. And so I thought, well, if I take alcohol out of the equation, hopefully the cigarettes will go. And yeah, I haven't smoked for 4 years and however many days. It's 4 years and a month now, isn't it? So
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
haven't
it must
smoked
be.
then either.
Yeah. So how was your first, because obviously it's the Christmas Christmas episode today. So how was your first Christmas? Bearing in mind you'd only
I'm
just
not going to
stopped.
lie. I didn't have the best Christmas of my life, to be honest.
What do you normally
I,
do for Christmas? Is it like seeing family and loads of drinking like everyone else, presumably?
Yeah, I mean, we would always go on Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve has always been the traditional piss up, and
Yeah.
the amount of times I've sat at Christmas dinner. I mean, there was one year I couldn't eat or drink the whole day because I was being sick.
Mm.
That went down well. I think that was actually 2014. And that was a big wake up call because my mum was absolutely livid with me, as you would be when you've slaved over a hot stove, and I just
Yeah.
literally couldn't eat it. So yeah, Christmas Eve was a big one, and because my brother's with his now wife, so it would be we'd either do Christmas Day on doing something and Boxing Day together, or vice versa. So it was a 3-day event.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've never been one to have a couple of glasses of wine and take it easy. Everything is a big event, followed
Mm.
by being sick the next day, followed by pulling something out of the bag to do it again, followed by being sick the next day, followed by pulling out the bag again. And it's just like, when I look back at it, I didn't really enjoy Christmas very much because it was just a cycle of doom, really.
Yeah. And how is it now? What Christmas is like now?
Quiet.
Do you still see your family though? Is it the same sort of routine for
Oh
you? Or
yeah,
have you
yeah,
changed
it's the
that? Same
same.
thing. Yeah.
It's the same thing. I was just saying to my group that the first Christmas I was surrounded by all the alcohol-free drinks.
Hmm.
I bought everything. My fridge only had eggs in it and the rest was drinks. This year I haven't bought an alcohol-free drink at all. So I was just saying to them, after 4 years, you're just not bothered anymore by that comfort blanket of stuff that you need.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the first year, oh my God, I was just clunking around to everybody's house, and I had the elderflower and the fake wines and the tonics and sugar galore. But I needed that, and I would say to anybody doing this year for the first time, you've got to do what's right for you, and if you need that comfort blanket of drinks, then by all means, if they don't trigger you and they are helping you, then go for it. Definitely.
It's a weird time at the moment, isn't it? Because part of me thinks it's easier for people during lockdown because there's not all the parties and all the rest of it. So from that perspective, I think it's in a way easier to stop drinking, but I think equally it's very easy to get into bad habits. I was thinking that today, just because you're working from home as well, aren't you, at the moment?
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
doing the same, and everything's kind of quietening down. And I was thinking, I wonder how many people are just sat there drinking this afternoon because the emails are calming down. It's all getting towards Christmas, and I can see it getting really easy to just sit around drinking virtually the entire day because you've got
Yeah.
no kind of boundaries or anything, have you? It's a
I
bit.
think it would have been really weird, like at the beginning. So at the beginning, what I did was surrounded myself with food. The day the lockdown was announced, I decided that I was just going to buy all the food, and I had I've got a shelf over there, and I just had loads of food on it.
And
And I
toilet
keep
paper.
looking back to that moment, going, did I actually lose the plot on that day? Because I went to the supermarket and was like, yeah, I'm just going to have everything. But I think we did or people that I know did that with food, and people also did that with alcohol. And I'm sure had I been drinking, I would have gone to the wine aisle and surrounded myself with bottles of stuff, because I think it was a comfort thing that we needed. And, you know, I think alcohol was the ultimate escape route if you were drinking.
Mm.
But like any good thing, it has to come to an end. It's like going on a holiday and drinking all day and drinking all night. When you come home, you have to go back to reality. And at some point, you have, this is our reality now, and our reality can't be drinking all day and all night, especially if you've got a job or children or whatever. So I think you're right. I think some people have found lockdown has really helped with their sobriety, but I think the other side of the coin is it's given too much freedom. There is no, oh, it's 5 o'clock, we'll open a bottle of wine. It's like, well, I'm sat in my kitchen, like when I'm working, so I would be staring at the fridge the whole day going, well, it's never too early, is it? You know,
That's
and
the
plus
problem,
the stress part of it, isn't it? It's just we all want something, we all want to feel something than what we're feeling at the moment. And sobriety dictates that we have to feel the feels, but if you are a drinker, then you opt to numb those feelings out. But you're going to have to feel them at some point. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? So we haven't got that many questions today, and 2 of the 4 questions are completely surrounding Christmas anyway, so I'll read them out. So the first one is, I have it very clear in my mind what the reality of alcohol is. The fantasy of what the society believes it does or gives is gone. But like many, I'm having a bit of a tough time around the holidays. The marketing of alcohol is so clever, with all the beautiful glasses and bottles and the whole spectacle around it. Why does my mind still move in the direction of where the marketing is pulling me? It's such an uncomfortable thought and feeling combination. I then, of course, stop it from running wild and tell it the reality of what alcohol does. So that was the first question. The second one, fairly similar, but you've mentioned this several times and written about it, but I'm seeing some struggle with the fantasy around drinking at Christmas. So I'm wondering if it's worth hearing from you again about this. Approaching 9 months alcohol free, so that's great news. So what are your views on that with the whole, I suppose it is your Christmas. Are you seeing family this Christmas?
Yeah. Well, we're going to, so my best friend's got a restaurant, so we're going there on Christmas Day. And, you know, I agree that, it is everywhere. Alcohol marketing is everywhere. But for me, it's about taking it off of my menu. So if I were a vegetarian, I wouldn't eat meat, and therefore meat is not an option to me. And so the way that alcohol is just not something I want in my life, and I've taken it off of my menu. So, you know, I won't look at a wine list, or, you know, I'm on Christmas Day, I will look to see if there are any alcohol-free drinks that I fancy. I'll probably just have water, because I generally do. But I think, you know, that the first question that was asked, they're doing the right thing. You have to just keep reinforcing to yourself why you don't want to drink. You know, something happened in the beginning that made you think, I don't ever want to do that again. And you just have to keep reiterating why you don't want to do that. And that could be journaling. We use the whys. We say, write down why you don't want to drink, what are the reasons, and keep reinforcing that. And your whys will change over time. And I also think, as I just said, like the first Christmas, surrounded by all the drinks, you know, obsessed with what am I going to drink on Christmas Day? What am I going to drink when I do a cheers? What am I going to have on New Year's Eve? Year 2 is different, and year 3 is even more different. And now it's just not on my radar. So it's just a matter of, you know, you're changing habits. So this Christmas, if you're sober for 9 months, then next Christmas you'll be sober for a year and 9 months, and you'll be in a very different space, very different mindset to where you are this year. So you just got to keep reinforcing the reasons why you're doing this.
I think that's really powerful as well, what you're saying about taking alcohol off the menu, because I think it's worth reiterating there what a craving is, because a craving is an actual thought process you go through where you're fantasizing about having a drink. And it starts off just thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have, I don't know, a glass of champagne, a beer or whatever. And then suddenly you're thinking about it and obsessing about it and kind of torturing yourself with the thought of it. And then, of course, whatever you're supposed to be doing, be it spending time with the family or relaxing over a meal or, I don't know, watching TV, whatever it is, you're not relaxing in doing that. All your attention is taken up with this unpleasant kind of internal dialogue stroke argument stroke tantrum. And if you take alcohol off the menu, i.e. you know for definite whatever happens you're not going to drink, you're much less likely to get into that mental kind of cycle of misery, because you're not fantasizing about it, you're not going to do it. So you don't sit there thinking, oh, what would it be like to have a drink now, wouldn't it be nice, because you're just not going to do it. So you bypass that entire thing. And I know it's kind of difficult because it's a chicken and egg thing, but if you can get into that mindset of saying, I don't care what happens today, I am not going to drink, you do find it easier. It's not just the power of positive thinking, it stops you going into that craving cycle.
Well, and also you've got to get in your mind that you're not missing out on anything. It's this whole I'm missing out. I don't sit around the Christmas table and wish I was anybody but myself, you know, and good luck to everybody with what they choose to drink in their glass. That's absolutely fine. But I'm more than happy with my decision and what goes into my glass, because I don't see alcohol as ending up fun. And I think that's where things get confused is, you know, my other phrase is do not glamorize the first drink. You know, if you're saying, oh, but look at it, it looks beautiful in that cut glass and it's like cold and it's crisp and it's going to be amazing. I don't see that, because that isn't where it ends. You know, and I'm sure after 4 years it probably would taste like shit as well. You know, I can't even go there. But I try to look at it and go, but that's not the story. That's just the first word of the story. The end of the story looks nothing like what you're glamorizing that glass to look like. You know, and yeah, I just look at it for what it is, and I believe alcohol is a poison, and I believe life is a lot better without it. That's the other thing I was going to say is, you know, I know you say it a lot. We're not doing this to make ourselves miserable. The whole point is don't put alcohol in your glass and just be a misery about it, because you know, life is for living, and you've got to give to get back. And I just think if you give yourself a chance, you can have a really lovely life without alcohol. It's not a necessity.
One of the things that even now I do it, but it was almost like the thing I held on to when I first stopped. The thing I hated the most about drinking, and I got it every time I drank, whether it was, you know, some massive disaster or I was just sat at home or whatever, but it was that waking up at like 3 or 4 in the morning, feeling both tired and anxious. And it's like in nature, if you're tired, you sleep, and if you're anxious, you feel awake. But it's only when you introduce alcohol that you get that horrific mix of the two. And I think the thing that triggered that off, which it was in last week's live, and someone said, what's the one thought you hold on to when you're thinking about drinking to drag yourself back to reality? And I said then, I need to ask you that question.
You do. And then I missed the question. I was like, oh God, what was the question?
So that's the question. What's the one thing?
What is the question?
What's the one thing out of anything else you think about to put you off drinking, to drag you back to reality?
I missed the question, and then you asked me the question earlier, and without doubt for me, it's just the texting thing.
Oh, right,
because as you know, I like my words, and my words were particularly brilliant at 3 o'clock with anxiety. You know, they were genius, they were good, but and then I was saying this recently, like when it was the old Nokia, if you deleted them, you would just delete them and they would disappear, but then I'd forget that I had deleted them or sent anything, and then I'd get a response.
Oh, no.
And I'd have absolutely no idea what I'd sent because I deleted it.
That's the worst of all worlds, that, isn't it?
It was the worst. And towards the end of my drinking, I just became so scared of the phone that every time it bleeped, it gave me a heart attack. So, I didn't really suffer with the 3 a.m. anxiety thing too much. I've always been quite a good sleeper, but my anxiety was the minute I up and then the phone would bleep. It could just be an email. It used to be that whistle.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, the heart would jump, and then something else, and then it would ring and the heart would jump. And that was one of my main reasons for giving up as well, because I just thought, I cannot live a life where I'm scared of a device because of something I've done that's making me scared of the noise. I mean, that's just a ridiculous notion, isn't it?
Oh, dear me. Yeah, do you, when you're there for Christmas Day, then your family will drink, presumably, do they? And you just sit there and don't drink? Fairly comfortable with that now?
It doesn't bother me at all. No, it doesn't bother me at all. But you say that, I mean, my family are very different to, I know you talk about going out a lot. I'm not, I used to be the party animal, and now I'm irrelevant of what's going on at the moment. But I don't hang out in places where alcohol is the focus. So at Christmas, I'm more than happy to hang out for many hours with people as long as there's food. But if the occasion was our Christmas Eve, which just used to be drinking from lunchtime until you went to bed, I attempted that in the first year. I attempted to do everything the same in the first year, and it just brought me down because you realise that your life is very different, that when you take alcohol out of the equation for yourself and everybody else is carrying on, you're just on a different level. I struggled the most with my social life. First 6 months I struggled. I expected it to get easier, and if I'm honest, it didn't get easier. I changed it. I did different things to bring myself joy, because by going and sitting in a pub with people drinking, I just realised I just didn't enjoy it. So I just stopped doing it. And I just did brunches more, or going out for walks more, or going around to somebody's for coffee or something like that. I just don't really go to the pub, and the pub's for one thing, really. And I know people will disagree with that, because I know people say, but you can drink alcohol-free drinks in a pub. Of course you can, but I just don't like being on a different level to somebody else.
That's the point, I think, because I think some people will advise that you stop drinking and then you should really be able to do everything you did previously. But I think there's got to be a caveat there, because if what you were doing previously is going somewhere with the sole purpose of drinking, query whether you want to keep doing that. And I think the problem with alcohol, it's not like smoking. Apart from the smell, but if you're with someone who's smoking loads, it doesn't actually change them particularly. They're still a person who, if you're getting on with them, are on your level. But because drinking intoxicates people, there's very quickly a kind of a mismatch between your mentality. And being with people that are drinking is just not enjoyable, in the same way if you were with people who are injecting heroin and becoming comatose through it, or smoking cannabis and getting really stoned. It would just be confusing and a bit irritating. And I think the problem with, at least if people are smoking cannabis, they tend to just sit quietly, whereas when people are drinking, what they have to say becomes so tremendously important, and they stand really close to you and just say the same thing over and over again. And I find it physically painful. I'm not particularly good at socializing anyway, but when there's someone like about 3 inches from your face just saying the same thing over and over again, I find it horrible. I can't do it.
I always find it interesting when you say about this, the social life side of things, because the thing that I've learned about myself is that actually I don't think I was ever the party animal that I'd believed myself to be. So I thought, if I'm honest, if I'd been sober my whole life, I don't know whether I would have actually ever gone to a party, because I used to get so stressed about it. I look right, wearing the right thing, who was going to be there, would I get left on my own? How would I get there? Would I but I just found the whole thing like really stressful. So what do you do to get rid of that? You go and buy some wine, and suddenly what you're wearing looks all right, you feel all right, and you know, you can go into the party and you're confident and all the rest of it. But actually, when I look back at it, did I enjoy the party environment? Did I enjoy need something to, I don't need to take something to enjoy the activities that I do, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
actually, I think I'm more introverted than I thought I was, and actually, I think I'm more confident than I gave myself credit for. So
I
it's interesting what you learn.
I think I think there's a degree of learning with social occasions as well. I know people say like when you start drinking, you stop at that emotional age and never progress. But I think certainly to a degree it's true, because I never liked social occasions, and like you, for me, drinking was the only thing that made them bearable. But actually having quit, and through work and friends and all the rest of it, you get dragged to these things occasionally. And actually I've got better at enjoying them than I ever did, because I think the problem is when you're drinking, you rely on alcohol and you think alcohol will make it fun, but actually often it doesn't anyway. And I kind of find now I've found ways to actually go and enjoy social occasions, not massively, and I'll still avoid it if I can. But when I'm when I'm forced to go, I actually end up usually enjoying it, which is really strange. I never thought I would do, particularly without drinking.
I enjoyed the 10 o'clock curfew. I enjoyed going out and everybody else having a cut-off point at 10 o'clock, because they didn't have the opportunity to get to the repetitive stage. We all had a nice
Yeah,
time, and then we all had to go to bed.
went
So
home.
I thought it was amazing. One of the stories, I went out, I was 6 months sober and I went to the pub. I remember it vividly. I lasted 17 minutes because what I found was drunk people start the story, they get about a third of the way in, and then they get distracted, and then they go back to the beginning, not
Yeah,
again. And you're like, but I've already heard this bit. But then you sound like a real sober martyr if you say anything. So you don't, you swallow it. And then
yeah,
they get to a third and a bit, and then they get distracted by something else. And then they start again. And I was literally like, oh my God, this is just wasting my life. I'm never
yeah.
going to get to the end, and I don't care about the beginning. So yeah, I call it the square peg and the round hole. I just suddenly realized that I wasn't going to fit in to all of the stuff that I'd been doing for most of my adult life, and I needed to find different things that didn't involve listening to the same story over and over
Yeah,
again.
well, I think you're right. You need to find things that aren't revolving around alcohol. It's all right to go to things where there is alcohol, as long as alcohol isn't the main focus, which I think it tends to be. Actually, funny enough, that there's a question here. This was one that was actually on the YouTube of the video, and it says, really helpful, thank you. Currently reading your book. Maybe you can answer this in a future life. Is it normal to hate alcohol and hate and hate and judge everyone associated with it when you quit? Since I quit drinking, I feel like I hate alcohol, and I honestly hate being around people that love drinking. I feel very triggered a lot, but not triggered to drink, triggered like rage. Very judgmental now of people drinking. I've dropped 20-year friendships and I didn't even care, felt good about it actually. I even have thoughts I want to drop family members sometimes and just never speak to them again. But I can tell this isn't exactly a logical mindset and I'm being super harsh. I just wonder if maybe anger towards alcohol and drinkers will pass over time and I'll become less judgmental the longer I'm sober.
I think it's peaks and troughs, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I have to say, I really sympathise with that because, as mentioned, I do find drunk people really irritating. It just doesn't do it for me at all. And I find it interesting as well because when you are with people that are drinking, it really dispels the myth that drinking is borrowing happiness from tomorrow, because they're not happy. A lot of the time, they're upset and angry about something. That's what I find with people. It
Yeah.
starts off kind of happy, and then very quickly they're angry and upset about something. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I kind of, how are you with that? I mean, I have to admit, I am extremely judgmental.
Well, I don't hang out with that many pissed people anymore, so I probably would be if I did. But that's where I think it's a bit of a. It probably sounds awful to say it, but it's a bit of a cleanse, really. You learn who your friends are, because if you say to people, you have to be quite ballsy about it and say, I don't want to hang out in a situation where you're going to get off your head and leave me stood on my own listening to your repetitive rants. you know and that, if that person is a friend, then they will come up with alternatives, I believe. And if they don't come up with alternatives, then they go their way and you go your way. I mean, hate's quite a strong word. How long had that person been sober? Not like 25 years or something.
I don't know. No, I'm not sure. Doesn't say, but yeah.
When I say peaks and troughs, I kind of mean it as well. Everything, I think, goes in a wave. I think sometimes you can be really like vengeful and angry about people that are drinking, because I think sometimes it's a bit like, why can't I be like them? Why can't I be a normal person? But the fact is it's not normal to take a drug to make you somebody else. So you are the normal person. You're don't strive to be something that you're not. And I think different people drink different ways. Some people will have a couple of glasses of wine and it can be quite pleasant to be around. I don't sit, my parents drink a couple of glasses of wine and they're pleasant to be around, but, they're not falling all over the place. But I probably wouldn't be seen at 2:00 in the morning with people who've been drinking for 10 hours. Mainly because I have to get up in a couple of hours and be a normal person.
I was just having a look at the comments actually, and someone's put here, I used to disappear without saying goodbye to anyone and always had to apologise the next day. I actually do the opposite. I went to a work do. It was a while ago actually, because this was before lockdown. And I kind of worked out that it was a massive do, because it was for the whole company. So there's thousands of people there. And I kind of worked out that you go off to the toilet and start talking to someone else and get some food. And if you just walk off, nobody really, one, they're drinking, so they don't really notice. And two, they don't know if you've just walked off and spoken to other people. So I've been there a couple of hours and people were starting to show signs of drinking and I was starting to get irritated. So I just left. And the next day my boss said, what time did you leave? And I said, what time did you leave? And he said, oh, it was just before midnight. And I went, oh yeah, I must have left just before you. Because you can just make it up. And that's what I love about it, actually. When people are drinking, if you work it right, you can actually enjoy yourself a lot more, because you could up and leave whenever you like without anyone even noticing.
It's really funny though, isn't it? Because then you think about all the time that you've wasted. Like, because I say to my members, actually, you only really need to go to a party or an occasion literally for an hour or 2 hours to get the best of it.
Yeah.
I think you say this, don't you? That then after a couple of hours, nobody knows what happened, what anybody said, what anybody did, nothing. So actually, it's a real waste of time.
Yeah.
And I think, sobriety brings great sleep. I would rather be asleep these days. I'm sure it's an age thing as well. But, I can do till 10 o'clock and then I'm done. And actually what I find is I put more effort in to those couple of hours. If I go out for dinner at 8 and I know that lockdown is 10 o'clock, I'll have really good conversations with people, because it's 2 hours. You've only got 2 hours. And so therefore it's a much better conversation, really, isn't it?
Yeah. But I do think it's true. People don't. So I remember this because I was coming up to a year. I was just shy of a year. Stopped drinking, and I went on a business trip to Cyprus. So it was in January, which is a bit of an odd time of year to go to Cyprus. And I think there was 3 of us, and we met another chap out there. So there was 4 of us, and it was just a massive drinking session. It was just an excuse to drink. So we had a couple of meetings and the rest of the time we were just drinking. So I wasn't drinking, but I hadn't quite got to the stage of just thinking to myself, you know what, I'm going to go back. So I kind of would get dragged along with them till like midnight, 1 a.m. before I gave up and just went back to the hotel room. So against this backdrop, there's only 4 of us. I'm not drinking, so it's like blatantly obvious that I'm not drinking because I'm constantly ordering water or whatever. And we go through several rounds of conversation about why aren't you drinking and all the rest of it. And then a few months after that, because one of the chaps I was there with, I didn't really see in the office every day, and I sort of bumped into him. And he said, "Oh, do you remember that? Oh, yeah." We just started talking about this Cyprus trip. And he started saying, "Do you remember when we went out this night? We got so drunk, blah, blah, blah." And I just sat there going, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." But he'd just forgotten that I wasn't drinking. He just assumed, because the trouble is when you're drunk, you don't notice things. What other
No.
people are doing it just isn't noticed. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that gives me a lot of confidence when I'm out, because I always feel really self-conscious. But when everyone else is drinking, I kind of think I don't need to feel self-conscious, because they don't have to be hammered. They just have to have a couple of drinks and they won't remember what I've been doing. Not because they've drunk so much they're in a blackout, but just because when you're drinking, you don't particularly remember as well what every person was doing in immense detail.
No, that's right. You're not bothered, are you? As long as your drink's topped up.
Yeah,
So you're only
good to
focusing
go.
there, aren't you?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. I'll just see if we got. I think did we have one more question? Oh yeah. So there's one last, well, two questions in one. How can I best help others who are struggling? Read my book.
Join my group.
Yeah, there we go. That's that done.
Mix the two together and you'll be a real success.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you? Have you got any other thoughts on that?
Well, I think was there another question about helping people as well? I think.
Oh yeah, it was. What, in your opinion, is the biggest missing link as to why people end up drinking again?
And for me, that would be connection. I think it's really important that you connect with like-minded people. One of the things that people say to me all of the time is, "I thought I was the only person." And the thing is, there's lots of people out there embarrassed about how much they're drinking, unaware of where to go. Like, until they find groups such as ours, they don't know where to go. And so they're just out there on willpower alone trying to stop drinking, and it doesn't work. You need the quit lit, your book, you need the groups, you need friends, you need people on the same wavelength as you. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen on my journey is how other people helping other people will keep people on the straight and narrow. So the first question, I don't know if they're talking about like friends who are struggling, but you need to be signposting people to helpful groups. And there are so many now. God, when we started, there weren't that many at all, were there?
No.
I mean, I don't even know if Alcohol Explained group was there when I started.
No, it wasn't, because I wrote the book and published it, and it was way after that I even thought to set the group up.
Yeah, I don't.
So it was. I can't remember when, but it was a long time after the book was there. Definitely. I think I don't know what happened there. Sorry, I think we got cut off. Not sure what's going on. I'll drop Dawn a quick message and just see if I can get her back on. Hold on, give me a minute. There we go. Hopefully she'll join us in a second anyway. Sorry, I'm not obviously not the best at these technical things like Zoom and sound. But anyway, I think we've done 40 minutes anyway. I mean, helping others who are struggling for me is always a bit of a difficult one, because I think for me it was a very logical approach that helped. I think one of the things it is worth saying to people is the thing that keeps us drinking is our beliefs. Oh, here we go. I think Dawn's back now. There we go.
Hello.
Hello. Sorry, I just
I have no idea. Was
I'm
that
just
me?
saying it's not that I'm just not very good with technology like sound and video. It's all a bit beyond me.
Was it me though, or you?
No, I don't know. I think my internet's playing up, so it might have been
Oh,
me. So yeah,
I was just sat there and I was but this has never happened, right? Apart from the sober sessions that I did
that's
with
why it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it never happens.
I know.
Anyway, I have no idea where we were at then.
Okay, I was just going on to one of my monologues. I was talking about how to help people who are struggling, and I was saying, so for me, to make it at its absolute simplest, it's our beliefs about alcohol that keep us drinking. So we believe we need it to socialize, we believe we need it to relax and to have fun and to cope with life and blah blah blah. And I think that doesn't matter what end of the spectrum you're on, because if you're like drinking 3 bottles of spirits every day, then it's still your beliefs. You believe that you have to have it, that you can't go a moment without a drink, that you go to absolute pieces physically and mentally when you're not drinking. So it's all these range of beliefs, and I think to be able to start to deconstruct them and realize that they're false is the key for many people. And I think if you can explain just that to someone, that a lot of the reasons you're drinking are actually false, and you can start to rationalize your way through it to a large degree, I think can be useful for people. But it's not, I know it's not easy. I don't know if you've got any particular thoughts on that one, but
It's really hard, isn't it? Because I mean, I think you just need to. You've just got to keep going through the shit, basically. And it's not an easy thing to do. Getting sober is not easy. And when you get to the point that you're struggling and you think, what is the point in this? Is the time that you need to keep going forward. And one of the best things that I see is when people start saying, oh my God, I know what you're talking about. Now I understand that, you know, they call it the pink cloud, don't they? But it's not even as big as the pink cloud. It's just noticing things, you know, just your sleep getting better, or you know, your food choices getting better, which means you've got more energy, which means you wake up earlier. You know, it's all those kind of things that people are looking for, and they don't believe that it's true until it starts happening. So it's just a matter of trying to encourage people to keep going further than they think they can, because they can keep going. And, you know, sobriety is just amazing when you get there.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem, because that whole pink cloud thing I think is interesting, because it's kind of used as if it's kind of like a false high that you get when you first quit, and then it suddenly dissipates and you're back to where you started. But I don't think it's that at all. I don't think it's that. When you get the chemical balance of your brain back to normal, and you start getting decent sleep, and like, as you say, because alcohol massively messes up your appetite and you're constantly eating all the wrong kind of food, you start to get a bit more energy, you just feel a bit lighter. But the problem is, we are humans and we tend to take things for granted. So you feel massively better and it feels fantastic. But as the days turn into weeks and into months, that becomes your new norm. And I think then you can get into this weird thing where you can think, oh yeah, I used to have a drink and I used to really enjoy it. I wish I could have one now and it would be really nice. But actually, you're way above where you were when you were drinking, because you're not drinking. And having a drink at that point, like you said, it's going to taste foul, but even the effect isn't going to be particularly pleasant, because you haven't got that chemical imbalance that needs a drink to correct it. It just makes you feel a bit dulled and tunnel visioned and not particularly pleasant.
I think the problem with drinking is that you live life either up or down. It was you that said about the line, wasn't it? And it takes you up above the line, and then was it you, or did you get that from someone else?
I don't know.
I'm sure it was
say
you.
All kinds of things. Yeah.
But you go above the line. The alcohol takes you above the line, but when you drop, you don't stop at the line. You drop.
You go down
below the line, and then you need a drink to take you back up again. And I see sobriety as the line. So I don't mean that to sound dull, like I don't ever have any highs, and don't ever have any lows, but they are, I was going to say limited, but that's not the right word. If I laugh, it's genuine and it's great. And if you really belly laugh at something, it's a high like no other. If you go low, you don't go as low as you did when you were drinking. So I think we're kind of saying the same thing, really. You don't get right all the way down. And sometimes I think that's what's hard for people to understand about sobriety, is because if you've lived 25 years of your life in an up and down cycle, sobriety gets the name boring because you're not having those ups and downs. However, I would prefer to wake up, it's very rare that I wake up thinking I don't really want to be awake today, or I don't really want to do this today, or I don't really want to go for a walk today, or I don't really, I don't know, do a million things today. I wake up thinking, woohoo, yeah, come on. Even if I'm tired, I'm just like, you've got to grab it with both hands, because one day there aren't going to be any days left. And I think that, for me, that's what sobriety gave me, was just such a zest for life, which was it was non-existent just before I gave up drinking. I'd wake up every day, snooze, 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 feel like shit, go to work, feel like shit all day, waiting for 5 o'clock, waiting to go and get back into bed again. And, it just was no life. Whereas now, even if I don't do very much in a day, even if I get up and I go for a walk and I have some food and I lie around and watch TV, it's still a better state to be in than a twitching, anxious mess, or with my head hung over the toilet bowl. So I'm just always grateful for feeling normal. I think normal is a great place to be.
Yeah. There was actually, I was going to mention just specifically about Christmas, because one of the big sort of ideas about Christmas is, having a glass of wine with dinner and it looks really nice. I had, I think most people watching this accept the fact that the whole wine culture is ridiculous anyway, that we're talking about a drug in a highly calorific drink, and that's about it. But anyway, so I had this work function. It was a Zoom wine tasting.
Oh God!
So
which seems to be all the rage, doesn't it?
Yeah. So you sit down, and they delivered like the day before these 4 half bottles of wine, and I just had some like apple juice. This is the thing, I bought. I bought apple juice, thinking I'll put it in a wine glass and it will look like white wine, and I hadn't realised I bought the cloudy.
Game is up.
Yeah, backfired slightly. But anyway, this connoisseur of wines, he was talking about all these different types of wines, and I'd heard before that when they do like blind testing, nobody, even the connoisseurs, can actually taste the difference between all these different wines. But he said, he admitted himself something I found really interesting. They did a test once where they got all these wine connoisseurs to sample all these different red wines, and it wasn't even cheap red wine. It was white wine with food colouring in it, and they couldn't tell the difference between it. So that's it. Just bear in mind when you're sat there on Christmas Day and people are sampling the wine and saying how wonderful it is. It's just absolutely ridiculous, just absurd. I think we're pretty much done with the questions, to be honest, but there's one last one. What, in your opinion, is the biggest missing link as to why people end up drinking again? So I'm reading that people who have quit for a while and then go back into it. I don't know if you've got a view on that. The
myth that is moderation.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually, isn't it? Because I suppose nobody ever thinks to themselves, right, I'm going to drink all day, every day and never stop. They all go into it thinking, surely I can have one or two.
I think that's the thing. I've said it today, is people think they've got it. And have I got it? Have you got it? Has somebody 25 years got it? I think that's another myth, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm fairly convinced I will never drink again, but you can never say never, because you just don't know what will happen that could trigger you to do that. But I think, I've done a lot of reading on sites in the last 4 years, and what it seems is people think I'm fixed. you know, I've had a long period that I haven't drunk for, so therefore I will be able to just drink 1 or 2 glasses. And I just always remember what you say, you know, you can't moderate an addictive substance. You know, and I also say, how many people do you read that go back to it that it was the best decision they'd ever made? You know, it's very rare. I don't think I've seen it that somebody said, that was the best night of my life. I am so pleased that I drank that. And, you know, nothing, you know, it depends what you want at the end of it. You know, if you want to drink it and have a really great night and think that you won't do it again. But the other problem is once you've let it in, I see it like a tidal wave, you know, it's just the first glass. I think that's another phrase, isn't it? Just don't have the first glass. And
yeah, well, it goes back to what you were saying as well about taking it off the menu. If it's off the menu and you're not having it, you're not going to crave it. But if you allow even the possibility of on this or that occasion, I might have 1 or 2, suddenly that whole obsession starts again. And I think that's the key for me. The fact is, like you said, with moderation, it's inherently difficult because when the alcohol wears off, it leaves an unpleasant feeling that needs another drink to relieve that feeling. Mm-hmm. So for a simple chemical reason, it's always going to be incredibly difficult to just have 1 or 2. But even assuming you can do that, you are never going to be in the situation when you first started where you might have a glass of wine and then a top up and then you forget to have another one and I just had 2 without even thinking about it. It's always going to take effort and obsession, and suddenly you're spending, you go back to what I was saying before, you're not enjoying the evening because you've had your 1 glass and you're going to wait an hour before you have the next one, or you're not going to have one. And to me, that's the worst of all worlds. Someone asked the other day about had you ever tried moderation. I genuinely never attempted to moderate because I think there was 1 or 2 occasions where I was driving and I said, I'll have 1 drink, and I just hated it. And I really quickly worked out that I loved drinking, or thought I loved drinking. I could put up with not drinking, but having 1 or 2 was just completely not acceptable to me.
And it's interesting you say that, actually, because I did try moderation, but I was the same about having 1. So if I was going out for dinner with somebody and somebody had to drive, I didn't mind offering to drive, but I'd rather not have any at all.
Mm.
And if I went, I've got a scenario in my head that I remember going for dinner and having 1, and then the whole night became about, right, so if I could leave the car here, I could get a taxi home. How would I get back here quick enough in the morning to get the car to get to work? And that's interesting that you say that, because I kind of forgot about that whole thing, that once I'd opened the floodgate, 1 just then, it just opened up the whole night in a completely different way. So instead of just going out for dinner with a friend at 7 and being home by 9, suddenly I'm like in Bournemouth at 2 o'clock in the morning with a whole load of people I don't know. Do you know what I mean? That's where my drinking would lead me, is, you know, I've got a vision now. I did end up in Bournemouth, not that night, but I did end up in Bournemouth on a Sunday night, having gone out for a quiet 1. And I ended up in a strip club in Bournemouth with a load of blokes paying like 10 quid for vodkas. And I had work in the morning, like 4 hours later, and just going, well, how did I end up? I don't know how that ended up here, but that's the problem, isn't it? Once you've let it in, it's not just having a glass of wine with your roast before you have it.
No, that's it, isn't it? Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, I think we probably need to wrap up because we're coming up to an hour now anyway.
Okay.
But sorry about the slight technical hitch.
Not at all. I was just like, I don't know what's going on. Thank you for inviting me. And
pleasure.
It's been lovely.
On. And have a great
sober Christmas.
Have a good Christmas, everyone. And in terms of lives, I'll probably do the next Friday. I haven't actually worked out the calendar for that.
That'll be New Year's Day.
Yeah, that would work. Anyway, I'll do a post, everyone. So thanks for watching, and thanks again, Dawn, for coming on.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Speak to you later.
Bye.
Bye.